Now, Rich Rodriguez seems to be proud to suggest that he is not the smartest one in the room. He says, coach doesn't have to be the smartest one in the room. But he's not stupid. Not stupid by any means. Which means you got to wonder, why has he been saying some things that are completely contradictory, sometimes within a few sentences of one another, and saying some things that are really just pure nonsense? I have some guesses as to why he's saying some of it. I'll get to that and some more. I'm going to say, I am Forrest Poston. This is WVU Football Going Deep, and it is the channel for fans who like to think as well as cheer. And I'm going to emphasize that. This is for fans who like to think. It is the #1 distinction for the channel. All right. I've been having people tell me that I'm too negative or I'm saying bad things about Rodriguez. And I'm doing the best I can. And I have gone out of my way to try and find positive things to say about Rodriguez. There are positive things to say. Some of those have kind of turned around. I'm going to get to some of that. But anyway, I do hope you'll subscribe, click thumbs up, all of that stuff. Be a link somewhere for buy me a cup of coffee. You can use the thanks button if you want, but YouTube takes 30% if you do that. If I ever get it up to the point that they don't do payouts till it's up to $100. So anyway, the press conferences for spring practice have been a farce. Now, a lot of people, oh gosh, I love his press conferences. Well, they are entertaining. Rodriguez walks out with no plan at all. But he has that ah shucks aura about him, and that little boy grin that has probably been getting him out of trouble since he was a little boy. And people fall for it. It's great. It's a nice show. But he doesn't say much of anything. Basically, it's like when you go to a restaurant and they feed you a ton of bread ahead of time, so you don't worry that there's no meat to the meal. Media has been kind of catching on to this. I think they caught on earlier, but professional media doesn't want to say much about it because they need to maintain what relationship they can with Rodriguez. Even though it's pretty clear Rodriguez does not want to maintain a relationship with them. He would just as soon pay no attention to the media at all and not much to the fans. He wants to coach football, and that's it. And maybe schmooze with the high-rolling donors. But let's look at some of what he has said. And it's not going to be in real order. Now, every press conference, he has, pointed, the team's not where it needs to be. And most of the time, he's also pointed out that that's normal for this point. Pretty much every coach in the country is saying about the same thing. And they say it every season. But both the professional media and the semi-professional or amateurs, and I'm an amateur who'd like to be semi-professional, I guess, have been taking that and turning it into, oh, Rodriguez is unhappy, the players aren't good enough, he doesn't like the players who were left over from Neil Brown's days. And multiple times he's pointed out that's not true, and in one of the most recent ones, he said clearly, he said, people seem to think I'm not happy with the players who stayed with the roster, and it's not true. And he took the time to say that Neil Brown is a good coach. Now, personally, I think he should have said some things like that about the previous staff and players the first day he got here. But that's not his way. It's not that he chooses not to say things like that. He just doesn't think of it. It's not his psychology. But he says Neil Brown's a good coach, and that the roster is, where it would be expected to be. All right. Now, let's look at things. Before spring break, he was asked if there were any plans to use Rodney Gallagher on defense. And he laughed and said no, because, if we had to do that, it would mean that, they had screwed up in their recruiting. Well, we come back from spring break and we're talking about the 105-man roster down from 120, and whether or not that makes it more important that a player be able to play two positions. And yes, by golly, it's more important. We're going to need guys who can play more than one spot, whether it is on the same side of the ball or both sides of the ball. Well, I don't think Rodriguez's understanding of the situation changed that much in a couple of weeks. I just don't think he really much cares what he says in these press conferences. This is all off the top of his head. And he's not thinking this, that. He's not planning. He's not, doing much of anything. He's just coming out there and, he'll tell some stories. He'll complain about the NCAA and the 105-man roster. And most of the stories he tells are the same ones he told the previous press conference and the one before that and the one before that. He's just trying to run out a 30-minute press conference. Then we have, again, with roster. Okay, we've brought in something like 60 players. We've got the incoming freshmen, not counting the ones who have decommitted. We've got the transfer guys that Rodriguez and his staff went out and got. And even after we get rid of all the walk-ons, we're still going to have issues with 105, just based on scholarship players who are there and those who are still coming here, in May, June, that time period. But he also says that we need to go into the portal and bring in corners, safeties, linebackers, defensive linemen, wide receivers, offensive linemen, and a running back. And maybe a kicker. Now the kicker, because the kicker had been doing well all spring, but he had a bad day that day, so he might have to go in the portal. Of course, that's nonsense. And we have more than one kicker on the team already anyway. I assume he was, I don't know whether he was talking about field goal kicker or kickoff specialist, and nobody asked. But some people say when he does that, or when he talks about the team not being where he wishes they were, that he's just trying to motivate players. Well, you're going out of your way to try to come up with an explanation. That's not it. If he wanted to motivate players, he'd be naming names. He'd be talking a lot harder than he is. Hard edge does not describe these press conferences. So, motivation, no. But first of all, we don't have room for a player even if we just brought in one player for each of those rooms that he named, we don't have the space on the roster, even after all walk-ons leave. And we might keep a couple of walk-ons. Long snapper, definitely, kicker, definitely. So guys currently on the roster will have to leave to be able to bring anybody in. Now, upcoming after this spring whatever, they will be talking to players, and they will tell some that they need to leave. It will be to their benefit. But Rodriguez has said that the way guys are working in practice, it doesn't look like anybody is currently planning to leave. How do you tell? I mean, if they're planning to leave, they're probably still going to be working hard. And I don't put a whole lot of faith in whatever Rodriguez says in these press conferences anyway. But some are going to leave. There's always some who leave. And there's kind of word getting out that, some players have been unhappy the first couple of weeks. Now, for some of those guys, the differences in how practices are run will start to settle for them here, well, in the next day or two. So some of the guys who were unhappy before spring break won't be as unhappy after spring break. So they may not leave unless they are told to leave. But we have over-recruited the defensive backfield. We have too many corners and safeties on the roster for a 105-man roster. And we just, if he's talking about still needing people in those rooms, either he's just making it up as he goes, or they did a lousy job bringing in transfers. I don't know which it is. Now, some of the guys they brought in were trying to come back from injuries. Maybe they haven't done it. We're not getting word, because another thing is media has not gotten access. They got one 8-minute visit the entire spring practice, and that was supposed to be 20. And I do not believe it was a mistake that it ended up being 8. I think that was a choice. And I don't know why he gave him that 8 if he wasn't going to give him anything else. But I mean, there have been leaks here and there of this person's doing well, this person has an injury. How reliable this information is, we don't know. It sometimes conflicts with what Rodriguez or some of the other coaches have said in the press conferences. It's one reason I don't necessarily trust what they're saying. So I think we are going to see some significant surprises with the transfer portal. Brings up next point. Rodriguez consistently talks about needing to just have one portal and not after spring. Because it means you don't have your roster set. That's but he has more and more bought into or pretended to buy into this idea of other teams poaching based on spring practice. Now, poaching happens. Just legitimate recruiting happens. Poaching happens. We know that. But based just on what a coach says at a press conference or one breakout game in the spring game, no. Coaches are not going to consider that anywhere near enough to poach somebody. Because if you poach them, you have to be offering them something pretty significant. And you want to know what you're getting. So, hey, this guy came out of nowhere in spring. Nah, ain't good enough. If they poach somebody after spring, they were planning to do it before spring practice. So I don't buy that, and I'm not convinced Rodriguez buys it. Um, you can call it bullshit, you can call it chicken shit, but it is manure of some variety. And I mean, I tend to think Rodriguez is playing with the media just because he wants to play with the media. He may well still be mad at the media because they haven't always said nice things about him. And, there were reasons for that. So, as fans, we have gotten cut off from the team. And I don't know if we are just, collateral damage and Rodriguez trying to get back at the media, or if he really doesn't give a crap about the fans, as long as he knows, hey, if they win enough games, the fans will come to the games and he'll still get paid. I think he'd be just as happy to play in an empty stadium if it didn't mean losing his job. But I mean, we've got nothing. We are just trying to come up with things to say, and we do not know who's playing well, who's injured, who's having problems. All of that has been kept from us in a way just not seen at West Virginia since this internet age. I don't like it, and I don't know anybody who does like it. Some make more excuses for it than others. I make no excuse for it. I hate it. I do not buy the reasons given for doing it. Of course, Rodriguez doesn't care if I buy it or not because I have zero effect on his status. But I call BS on Hard Edge because this is not Hard Edge attitude. Hard Edge would be, you want to poach our players, give it your best shot. We'll beat you. This is hiding. This is, as I said, this is chicken shit. This is yellow. Yellow stripe, clean up the back from the coccyx to the medulla oblongata. I know I just pissed a lot of people off if anybody is watching. So, oh well. Let's see here. Oh yeah. I'll cover this one, and this is a big one to me. Now, this video is kind of stretching on. When I listed, I was pleased that Rodriguez had finally named specific things he'd learned. One of those was that he had added downfield passing to the RPO. Before, if there was a pass option, it was just a little screen. Well, he's learned and he's added downfield passing. Sounds good. Well, when Rodriguez left and Bill Stewart was named interim coach, one of the very first things he said was that the problem with the offense was a lack of downfield passing. And that had to be corrected. Downfield and especially over the middle. And he added that for the Oklahoma Fiesta Bowl game. And go back and watch that and look at how much of a critical role that played. And there's really no significant doubt that Bill Stewart had been telling Rich Rodriguez that they needed downfield passing, and he had probably been telling him that for at least 2 years, maybe 3. And it still took Rich Rodriguez years after that to learn it and do it. Well, I reckon he's not the smartest person in the room. But So I'm not impressed. And let's clarify one thing. If there had been downfield passing in the game plan those during the Pat White years, and he was a good enough passer to do it, we would not have lost to Pitt. We would, and we might not have lost any other games that year. We would have played for the national championship just by having downfield passing as part of the weekly game plan, probably just by listening to Bill Stewart. We would have played for the national championship at least once, maybe the year before. And we might have won it too. Would have been probably our best chance. So if you have thought that Rich Rodriguez cost us a chance at playing for the national championship, you're right. And he probably shouldn't have, because he should have known better. All right. That's, I guess, just one long rant. And there was supposed to be a practice today. As the last I checked, there had not been a press conference, possibly because of Ross Hodge having his press conference as coach for the basketball team. We've got the spring, spectacular. I don't think it'll be very spectacular coming up Saturday. If it doesn't get completely rained out, I don't know if they have plans for rain. And that'll be it for spring. Then we will open the portal a little after that, and we'll see what happens. Now, I still expect the team to win at least 8 games this year. Rich Rodriguez usually wins games. Usually right around 7 to 8 games. Every now and then 6, sometimes 10. Thereabouts. He's an above average coach. He's not a great coach, but he's an above average coach. I don't know where I go from here. And most of you obviously don't care. Anyway, I may see you later. I may not. Depends on what happens here and what happens there. So long.